Hello, friends in Dhamma. Today I was invited by this study group again, invited by Steve to give a talk on Mudita or Mudito, joy, selfless joy, altruistic joy. But first, homage to the Buddha. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. So today I would like to talk about, how to get to mudita. So mudita also depends on conditions. Like everything else, it arises due to the presence of the necessary conditions. And if we look, within the context of the suttas where we find mudita or this selfless joy, predominantly we find it in the Brahma Viharas. So the Brahma Viharas have been translated as the divine dwellings, the divine abodes, the supreme dwelling. Brahma is the highest level. So these are some of the ways that we can think of the Brahma Viharas, these selfless states, altruistic states. So in order to be able to truly experience this mudita, this selfless joy, first we need to develop the first necessary condition, the first step into the Brahma Viharas, which is metta, maitri. And metta can be thought of as benevolence or universal goodwill, wishing that all beings like oneself be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful, right? So you're just wishing that all beings be well. It's goodwill, benevolence towards all beings. So this is the first level that we need to truly develop to get to a selfless joy, an altruistic joy, to cultivate mudita. So how do we go about this, right? So we can go about this by recognizing first that in the same way that I want to be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful, other beings also would like to be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful, right? We have to make this paradigm shift from being egocentric and always thinking about ourselves to thinking about others, right? And not just the people that we care about, right? So metta is appamanya. It's without limits, boundless, in the sense that it encompasses all beings. So metta is really about all beings, not just wishing well for one's family members or one's friends or, I don't know, your football team, baseball team, your country, your ethnicity, humans or all the animals and beings on this planet, but all beings without exception. May they be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. That is metta, right? In order to really to really develop metta, it has to be without conditions. It has to be unconditional goodwill towards others, right? Instead of wishing others well because they serve us some function, like they take care of us or they're providing something for us. Regardless, simply because they are living beings, we wish them to be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. Right? This is what metta means. Metta is not romantic love. It's not, like a longing for someone, a desire. That is not, metta. Metta is defined by its ability to not discriminate between beings and see all beings like oneself. Right? So this is what we have to cultivate. We have to cultivate this boundless state that encompasses all beings. Right? And this state is a tranquil state. It's a peaceful state. It's a wholesome state of mind. Um, so once we develop this first level of the Brahma Viharas, metta, once we stop thinking egocentrically and start thinking about others, then we also wish that those beings that are suffering be free from their suffering, right? So we're no longer making a distinction between others and ourselves. Now we're encompassing all beings like ourselves, right? So in this sense, when we are faced with the suffering of other beings, we wish that they are free from that suffering, right? May they be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. May they be free from ill will. May they be free from harm. May they be free from all the bad things, all the unwholesome states. Because one recognizes in the same way that I don't want to be hurt, in the same way that I don't want to be abused, other beings also don't want to be hurt. They don't want to be abused. So in the same way that you would wish for yourself to recover from a disease, to come out of debt, to escape some difficult situation, you also extend that. You extend that goodwill towards all other beings. So this is karuna, compassion. And the emphasis here is on the liberation of beings, on their freedom from suffering, their capacity to be free, right? So we're not focusing on their suffering. It's not a morbid thing. It's seeing that suffering and being moved towards facilitating that beings be free. So also, just like metta is a wholesome state of mind, a tranquil, peaceful state of mind, also a karuna, compassion, is also a peaceful state of mind. So this is how we can check if we're really practicing Buddhist compassion, karuna, if we are tranquil, peaceful, right? That is really the understanding. That is really how we know if we're in the karuna level. So now in the first level, metta, we wish that all beings be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. In the second level, karuna, we wish that those beings that are suffering be free from their suffering. May they be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. May they be free from all their afflictions. May they be free from all their suffering. So now we have reached a deeper level of selflessness, of altruism. Instead of just worrying about our own happiness, and instead of worrying about our own suffering, we're now concerned about the happiness and the suffering of all beings, like if it was our own. Right? The Buddha gives the example in the Karaniya Metta Sutta in the same way that a mother would give her own life to protect her one and only child. To that extent, right? To the extent that the mother stops thinking about herself and thinks about others. That is the level that we're practicing these things. So the emphasis here in this example is not that we should give our lives for others, but that perspective that mother has, right? That she's not thinking about her own well-being. She's thinking about the well-being of others. Like metta, may they be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. And like karuna, may they be free from their suffering, right? So by having these good motivations, by having these good drives, attitudes, inclinations, having this peaceful, tranquil state of mind that is focused on the happiness of others, right? Not just pleasure. I mean, like, happiness, dharmic happiness, Buddhist happiness, that kind of happiness. We become happy also, right? So we're focusing on the happiness, wishing that other beings be well, wishing that other beings be free from happiness. Having this state of mind, a natural joy arises in the mind, a happiness, right? By focusing on the happiness of other beings. So when we remove our attention from ourselves, when we remove this tight egocentricity that is based on greed and hatred and delusion, which is self-centeredness, by letting go of these things, dropping these things off, there is a joy that comes from this relief of being egocentric. There is a joy that comes from thinking about others, about their well-being in general, and about them being free from suffering. So once we really encompass, really develop metta and karuna, mudita, joy, happiness arises, right? Because we're focusing on the happiness of other beings and them being free from suffering. That's really the key to mudita here, right? That's the key. Selflessness is the key to mudita. It's a selfless joy, right? So that's what we have to remember. By developing metta, uh, we get into karuna, because first we acknowledge that other beings are important as ourselves, and that makes us want other beings to be free from suffering. And that selfless motivation, attitude, inclination, concern for other beings brings happiness in itself. So sometimes when we hear about mudita, we usually get the emphasis is really on like seeing other people be happy, and then we become happy that they're happy, and that's true, right? But that is due to our selfless, non-egocentric perspective now. Only when we stop being egocentric, only when we have goodwill towards others, only when we're concerned about other beings can we reach that level, right? Where other beings' happiness is just like our own. But this mudita, this joy, this happiness depends on karuna. And this karuna depends on metta, right? So this is the way we have to think about how we get to joy, how we experience joy. Joy, the joy of selflessness, the joy of letting go of one's own greediness and letting go of one's ill will towards others and letting go of one's own delusion. That means being concerned only with oneself. So when we drop this self-centeredness, we drop this urge to want things our way, regardless of what happened to others, or only concern ourselves with our group of people, whichever group you want, and to the exception of other groups. So this leads to more suffering. You cannot be joyful this way. But once you drop all these barriers and you develop a boundless mind, a limitless mind that encompasses all beings, that is a happy state. Once we're able to connect, resonate, be attuned with other beings, that in itself is a joyful state. So this week's emphasis is on mudita, so I will not go on to the last step, upeka, of the Brahma Viharas. I'll save that for another day. So I wanted to share this with you. How do we get mudita? Mudita depends on conditions. Mudita depends on karuna. Karuna depends on metta, right? And also metta also depends on samaditi, right? So having the wholesome view, the right view, is also very important. But just focusing, on taking all previous Buddhist knowledge required and practices, we can just focus on metta within the context of Brahma Viharas. And by extending metta, even metta itself has a dimension of happiness to it, right? So Brahma Vihara is, although, we divide it into these 4 categories, there's no clear line, where we divide it in like, okay, there's some particle of metta here and only that's metta. And then there's another particle over here, which is completely separate from the other. And it's called karuna. And we don't atomize things. There's no such thing like that. It's simply for conventional means that we break it up, theoretically, for we can practice. But within metta, there is karuna. Within metta, there is mudita. Within metta, there is upeka. But the more we develop metta, we start sinking into the deeper levels of it, right? We start going into karuna, is what we call a deeper level of metta. Mudita is a deeper level of metta. And upeka is an even deeper level of metta. So we can think about the Brahma Viharas and our progression towards joy, cultivating joy, as like a pool, right? So in the pool, there's like the kiddie side, like 2 or 3 feet, then 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet towards the pool. So metta is like when you're just getting into the pool. And then karuna is like, you're up to your neck. And then mudita, you cover your head. And then Upekkha is when like you can't touch the ground, and like even if you stretch with your arm, you can't reach out of the water. You're in the very deep end now. Okay, so there's a but although we see these numbers in the pool like 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, there is no direct cutoff. There's no like cutoffs in the pools. Usually pools are slanted right down. It's a gradual inclination towards it. So it's a gradual penetration towards joy. So if we wanted to develop joy, we really have to focus on metta. That is the foundation to living a joyful life, right? Wishing others well, universal benevolence, universal goodwill. All right. Well, I think I repeated myself a lot, but hopefully it wasn't too redundant. So, once again, friends, I'd like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to share Dhamma with all of you. And may you be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. Sukhi Hotu.